Ready for an out-of-this-world experience, fellas? Look no further than the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped that has just taken off not only in the U.S., but Canada, the U.K., across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. Inside the package, you'll find their brand-new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your whole solar system. Check it out today by getting to manscaped.com, and you can get 20% off plus free shipping using the promo code HAYES. That's HAYES at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping using the promo code HAYES at manscaped.com. Hour 2 Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. It's an abbreviated show today. Canada-U.S. Women's World Championship. Puck drop in about an hour. You can hear it right here on TSN Radio, watching on TSN. And if you're watching tonight, of course, you're going to see our friend Tessa Bonhomme do her thing. Tessa's living that bubble lifestyle out west, and Tessa will join us here in a moment to help us tee up the game. I am kind of northeast of the city, and it is sunny outside where I am.
It is apparently downtown, hailing like crazy.
Right.
So be careful, obviously, and drive safely. And if you're listening on the radio in your car, be careful.
Watch yourself downtown. Yeah, that hail, man. You just sent that video. It is wild down by the Dome. And I don't think that's going to help the Jays. Jays are getting rocked. And, Robbie Ray, we talked a little bit about him in 14 Ks, and I think it was fitting that Alejandro Kirk called his game. The last couple of games he's played really well, pitched well. That battery's worked out, and Kirk gets the big hit last night. But, man, this Jays team, they cannot stay consistent.
No.
It just is not going to work for them.
And you know what? I was thinking about watching the other night, watching Chicago, and there's Tony La Russa, 76 years old, managing the team. And remember when he was hired? Now, there was a lot of people outraged about it. He'd been busted for DUI like the week before he got hired. But he's 76. He hasn't managed in the big leagues in 9 years. His philosophies are too old school. It'll never work. Here they are in first place by 10 games.
Yep.
And I got to say, like
you still got energy too, man.
And his philosophy, put the ball in play. They've got fewer home runs this year than Baltimore does.
Right, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Baltimore, historically awful. Yeah, they win ball games, and he gets in your face, and he's yelling and screaming. He's got a chip on his shoulder. That's the story of Tony La Russa. Second all-time in wins, 3 World Series. I'd say it's worked out pretty well for him. Canada-USA tonight. It's always special whenever we see this happen. It is part of the group stage. If you win, you don't win gold. If you lose, you don't go home. But there's always something on the line. And our friend Tessa Bonhomme is out there. She'll be hosting the coverage tonight on TSN. She's very familiar with this matchup. She's played in it many times herself. And she joins us back on Overdrive on the Maple Toyota Hotline. How's that bubble lifestyle treating you, TB?
It's bubbly.
Yeah.
We've got a parking lot out by the rink called Jail Yard that we often take hot laps around if and when we have a minute. But other than that, you know what? It's worth it. I mean, I do this a few times over for these ladies to be able to play. So they waited long enough to have their turn, and I feel like everybody here is pretty committed, making the most of it. I mean, you got spike ball, you got footballs, you got soccer balls, you got cornhole happening. So anything to keep the spirits up. But we're pretty much in the rink. Gord knows the routine. I mean, you're in the rink from 10 in the morning until 11 at night. So it's hockey 24/7 here, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that'll work. And Canada-USA tonight, and as I said, you're very familiar with playing in a matchup like this, and it's always meaningful, even though it is the group stage. And we've had this conversation the past couple of days, Tessa, the fact that the roles have been reversed here over the last few years, where the States, they're favored. They have kind of owned this series to an extent. So I think it's imperative that Canada shows up. I think it's more meaningful to them if they get a win tonight. Do you share that mentality? I mean, what is on the line here for Canada?
Yeah, a lot of people think, it's preliminary round, doesn't really matter, but that is not the case for any woman in either locker room. You never like losing to each other, and you said off the hop, if you win, you don't get a gold medal. If you lose, you don't go home. But every game that we do face off against each other, there is some imaginary gold medal on the line, and we play like it. And you lose, you're extremely ticked off in the locker room after. Or you win, and you feel a little bit better about yourself, but, you know that you got to move on pretty quick because the tournament in itself moves fast, and everybody's gunning for everybody come the knockout round. But as far as USA-Canada goes, it's bragging rights. For Canadians, I think for them it's starting to develop that winning culture in their dressing room. They got a lot of young players here that are competing at the Worlds for the first time, and it's important for them just to learn how to beat the Americans and how to win against them. So any and every win, any notch you can get under your belt in that sense is huge moving forward. And with that, I mean, it's just a vote of confidence moving into the elimination rounds. If and when they do meet in the final, and it does end up being those two, obviously it didn't in 2019, but if it does, I mean, you at least have that edge. Now, it could work against you in a sense that, whoever loses has a little bit more MO to come out firing. But for the Canadians, I think its main focus is, one, experience for those younger players, and two, building that winning culture.
Tessa, Marie-Philippe Poulin was hit in the throat with a shot, we're told the other day, will not play tonight. Any indication on how long she'll be out? And this is a huge loss for Canada. Arguably, the greatest player, I would say maybe the greatest female player Canada's ever produced, and one of the greatest of all time. Yeah,
and what was the first thought that came to your mind when she got hit in the throat and face area there, Gord?
Yeah, exactly.
What's she doing out there in a 5-0 lead, killing a penalty? What's your best player doing, killing a penalty? It was frustrating to watch, mostly because this Canadian team was really starting to catch their groove, and as mentioned, she's their number one center. She's their top player. It was an unnecessary incident that took place. Nonetheless, this is their reality. This is what they're faced with. We have not been told at all when her return will be, but we are told that she is okay, and that they're just going to give her this game to take a quick breather. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's going to push this team to not rely on her so much to be the one to score against the American team. Because as you guys both know, she's pretty much the go-to player to score against the Americans. And so it's going to put the onus on a lot of these younger, newer faces to become that person and to build that confidence and learn how, to succeed without Poulin really carrying the load. As far as Pooh and what the injury is, we don't know. I can only assume that from what I saw, I thought she took it in the chin first and then it hit her in the throat, which is pretty lucky. With that, I don't know. She could have had her bell rung a little bit. I know that's a terrible term, but I don't think getting hit in the face ever with a one-timer ever really has you walking away feeling great.
No kidding. We're chatting with Tessa Bonhomme. We're about an hour away from Puck Drop Canada-U.S. on TSN, right here on TSN Radio as well. It kind of has been goals and offense by committee, though, this early in this tournament, Tessa. I mean, obviously, we know what Poulin will bring to the table when she returns. And on the flip side, the Americans, similar story. We know Hillary Knight is someone to focus on clearly. But it feels like there's some balance here on both sides of it tonight with Canada and the U.S. So how do you expect the game to actually play out? Are we talking high scoring, low scoring? What kind of expectation do you have for the game tonight?
That's the beautiful part about it is neither goaltenders have really been tested. Canadians got a young D-core right now coming in, so it'll be interesting to see how they react to this potent offense that the Americans bring. It's the hardest thing about them, and I think the most important part for the Canadian defense here, is communication. It goes a long way, and it shouldn't just be a one-off type game thing. It should be an every game thing. These Americans do not stop moving in the offensive zone, so they're really going to have to make sure they stay sorted, that they're constantly communicating with each other and their goaltender to know where all these players are. You mentioned Hillary Knight. Her line has been completely insane at this tournament. They're just a step above everybody. It's too obvious to see. So they're firing on all cylinders. But then the U.S. has young players like Grace Zumwinkle, who has the size, she's got the speed, and her hands are ridiculous. After she scored her first goal at this tournament, I was like, okay, good game by the kid. Wonder if this will hold up or if this is just a one-off. And every game she's managed to knock me off my seat. So I think the future of women's hockey in the United States is looking pretty good, but same for Canada. I mean, you look at Sarah Fillier. We talked her up pretty big before this tournament, and that made me nervous. I was like, I don't like putting pressure on these young players like this. You know, we're talking about her as if she's the next Marie-Philippe Poulin, and sure enough, she shut me up real quick.
Good.
She's looking like a true pro out there. Yeah, I love to see it.
Yeah.
Tessa, there's nobody.
It's wicked.
Tessa, if you look at the save percentage stats in the tournament,
Yeah.
neither Canadians in the top 10. And Renee Debian and Emrys Mashmeyer, neither of them is in the top 10. How much of a concern has goaltending been so far?
Usually on the Canadian side, you never really worry because we've always been so deep. We've had the top 3 goaltenders in the world, and the power's kind of shifted. I mean, you look at Noora Ratu from Finland. She's up there as one of the top goaltenders, and then you look at the 3 goaltenders the Americans have, and you're like, uh-oh. We've got 3 young goaltenders here donning the jersey for the Canadian team with not a ton of experience, so you're kind of like, what do we do here? Who do we go with? How do we compare them to anybody? And I think this is going to be step number 1. And it's going to be a tall task, a heavy order here. But I think that, you know, based on Mashmeyer's history, I think on Debian's history and the confidence that she just exudes, I think that the Canadians are going to be sitting pretty. And honestly, we've got a young goaltender in Campbell here. She's a big body. She's very calm and poised in the net, and she kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Carey Price in terms of she's proper in her goaltender movements. I'm searching for a word here. I'm having a little bit of a brain fart, but she's really tight, and I wouldn't be surprised throughout the centralized year if she kind of emerges as one of the top goaltenders for Canada. So I think we've got something promising looking, but I think it's going to end up coming down to, you know, what defensive core is going to be able to shut down the other team's offensive threats the most. That sounds like Captain Obvious, but easier said than done.
Well, likely a precursor of the final, but we got to get through the group stage first. Canada, U.S., starting in about an hour on TSN, right here on TSN Radio as well. I know you got a lot of obligations out there, a lot of TV responsibilities, so we always appreciate you finding time for us, Tessa. We'll do it again down the road. Thank you for this.
Anytime. Don't forget to tune in to our pregame show, 5:30.
There you go. Okay.
What a plug.
Shout out to the pregame show. I like it.
Good for her. Good plug. So you got to do that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey. Absolutely. Tell everyone also they can catch our podcast or something. If they're not listening to us live, throw a shout out to us or something at 5:30. Thank you, Tessa.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one. Good chat.
Yeah, there's Tessa Bonhomme. Pre-game in about 20.
You know those movie star interviews they do, like the car wash they do, where they sit down with everybody and do the interviews.
Yep.
They say that you could ask Arnold Schwarzenegger any question, and he would get the name of his movie into it. Like
They'll find a way.
No matter what you asked him.
What you had for dinner last night?
Well, we were doing 2 minutes to 3, and no matter. It's like skiers. They come down the hill. They haven't stopped moving yet. They got the skis off and they're up here.
Right.
Like.
Is there anything, like, how has there not been a movie on his life?
I know, huh?
Like, Schwarzenegger, coming from, he's Austrian, the bodybuilder, arguably the greatest bodybuilder of all time, then becomes one of the biggest blockbuster movie superstars of all time, then the governor of California, the biggest state in the Union.
There was the documentary about him. Remember, it was Pumping Iron, right?
But that was a biography, to your point. Like, that was
Arnie,
tracking him.
That's first phase Arnie. Like
that was the original.
Not movie star Arnie, Conan the Barbarian.
That was long before The Housekeeper came into play and everything, too. I mean, there's been a lot of curveballs here with Arnie. Like, old Arnie has had Maria Shriver was his wife. Like, he was related to the Kennedy family.
But he always said, as far as he was concerned, she married into the Schwarzenegger family.
I love that.
Which is a great line.
The great American Schwarzenegger family. That everyone's familiar with.
We've all
the compound up in Martha's Vineyard. Everyone's familiar with it. Everyone knows. Yeah, Arnie, his uncles were in the White House, and everyone knows it. What a life, though. What a life, Arnold.
It really is.
And like the fact that he was such a blockbuster superstar, and a lot of his movies were spectacular, yet did not say anything. Like no dialogue whatsoever. Terminator, the first 2 Terminators are 2 of the great movies.
Yeah.
James Cameron.
Yeah.
He says nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
That's
the point.
What's your favorite Schwarzenegger movie?
I would probably say the original Terminator. Like I think the original.
Okay, one where he speaks.
Yeah, he speaks more, I guess, with the second one, right? Because he comes back.
I'll be back. Yeah.
And that actually is a really cool. That's a really cool idea for the second one. That he comes back to actually help John Connor.
Yeah.
And when Connor sees him again for the first time, I don't think I'm spoiling anything. This stuff came out over 30 years ago.
You can't spoil a movie from 30 years ago.
Right. But, yeah, I think the two Terminators, but
for me,
I can't think of anything with dialogue.
Kindergarten Cop is actually, you know what? I was on the road.
It's not a tumor.
The Kindergarten Cop is a terrible movie.
No, it's not.
It's an awful movie.
No, it's not. It's
awful.
It's actually pretty good.
But there's great sound bites in there because he has dialogue, like the one that Mullen just played.
It's not a tumor.
I actually liked it. I remember being on the road somewhere, and having a day to kill. Like I'm not like Jamie McLennan. Like I don't go to the movies every day.
Right.
But
by yourself.
I go a lot by myself. Yeah. It's on the road. I'll go or with some. If you're with a team, just go on the road with them and go to the movies. And I remember thinking, there's nothing else. I'll go to Kindergarten Cop and being pleasantly surprised.
Okay, maybe it's not awful, but it's not a great movie.
Who is your daddy, and what does he do?
It's really not a great movie.
It is a good movie.
It's offered up great sound bites. Like,
Yeah,
that's the best one for sound bites for Arnie. Like, when people do the prank calls using Arnold Schwarzenegger as, like, the guy pranking or making a call to somebody, it's outstanding material. It's great. True Lies was okay.
Oh,
I didn't love True Lies, but it was just okay. Tom Arnold's in it. I'm not a huge fan. I'm trying to think of other great movies that he. He's been in.
I was actually mesmerized by a bad movie yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was flipping around on Crave, and Battleship was on.
I don't think I've seen that.
Like how Liam Neeson managed to get himself into that thing.
Well, you talk about typecast. Is there anyone more typecast than Liam Neeson?
Well, he plays an admiral in Battleship.
Okay.
Like it's a truly bad movie. Like on every level, it's a bad movie.
Last Action Hero, that was okay.
Oh, that's the one where the kid gets into the movie. Like
he's into like the
becomes part of the movie.
He's into the movie.
Yeah.
He's like, this is a movie set. Like you don't understand.
Yeah.
Predator was a big one for him. I think we can run down the list. He's had
lots, right?
Big
like,
movies.
There was a time when he had. He had like.
He was #1 guy in terms of a box office.
Like
2.5 Men was a great movie with Danny DeVito.
What about Twins?
Twins is with Danny DeVito. Yes, Twins is a great movie.
That was John C. Reilly, wasn't it? Was it DeVito or John C. Reilly?
No, Twins was DeVito. Twins was DeVito. That was where.
What was the one with John C. Reilly?
I'm not sure. Now I'm trying to. I'd have to look that up. Anyway, Arnie's had a good run. He's had a very, very good run, and there's been some great movies that he's been a part of.
Not a tall man.
Is he not?
No, I was surprised.
I would have figured he'd be 6'4", 6'5".
Don't think so. No, I think I'm taller than he is.
Well, I actually had a weird because I have not been a big movie goer throughout my life. Yeah, it's not been something that I ever was a It's not that I'm not a fan of going to the movies. It was just never on my radar. Like I got to get to the movies. I got to see. Every once in a while, a big movie would come out, and I would want to go see it. Like I love Bond movies. If a new Bond movie comes out, I'd like to see it in the theaters. When the Batman movies were coming out, I remember Dark Knight came out. I was like, I got to go see that in theater. We did. But with COVID, it's given you a totally different perspective of going to the movies, the appreciation of it all, and the sounds that come with the theater. Like a packed theater on a Friday night. Oh, yeah. Remember during the previews and when a preview would come to an end, you could hear everyone talking about whether or not they think that's good, that's bad. Like I missed that so much. And again, it's not something that I did that often.
I hate to admit
you take for granted.
I hate to admit it. I've never been to a Marvel movie. I don't think.
I have. There's some. I'm not a comic book guy.
I'm not a comic book guy either, so it doesn't. Yeah. They don't.
But that doesn't mean they don't make good movies. Like the Avengers, they're quality movies. Like there's some decent stuff in there. But I'm more of like I think they're coming out. Isn't Mission Impossible coming out with another one soon?
Yeah, because Tom Cruise just landed in somebody's yard with a helicopter the other day.
Right, and they're spectacular movies. Like they are. Like Ethan Hunt, is it Ethan Hawke or Ethan Hunt?
Ethan Hawke's an actor.
Yeah, Ethan Hunt. That's his name in it. Yes, and it's Cruise and Mission Impossible. It's unbelievably well done. Every movie's good. I think every Bond movie is pretty good. The Bourne movies, like that's more
the new
up my
Bond, like
wheelhouse.
These Roger Craig Bond movies are pretty good.
Yeah, well, they got a new one coming out in I want to say in the fall.
What did I say?
You said Roger Craig. You're saying
the great San Francisco running
Daniel
back.
Craig.
Daniel Craig. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Daniel
so
Craig.
Ethan Hawke, Roger Craig.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. As long as we get Bond right.
The old Giants manager.
Yeah, it's all the same thing.
It's
all
all
good.
Craig,
So anyway, thanks again to Tessa for joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. It's time to Toyota. Discover your next Toyota hybrid at Maple Toyota. Come see why Maple Toyota is the best place to get yours. Visit Maple Toyota right next to Wonderland. Randy Mueller will join us, former Saints and Dolphins GM. We'll get back into the NFL scene, back into the baseball scene as well. And the golf scene, I guess Brooksy and Bryson are willing to squash the beef ahead of the Ryder Cup. Are we actually buying that? Do we believe that will be the case? That and more coming up. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Randy Mueller will be calling in here in just a moment, former Saints and Dolphins GM, host of the Football GM podcast. Get back into some storylines throughout the NFL. We're getting real close.
Yeah.
2 weeks tonight.
Hey, by the way, Step Brothers, Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly. Will Ferrell.
Yes,
I got my Step Brothers and my twins mixed up.
That was what was throwing me off. You were saying John C. Reilly with Arnold. I'm like, I don't remember anything where John C. Reilly.
Step Brothers and twins.
Yeah, slightly different era.
Yeah, slightly different.
Bit of a different, although the concept somewhat similar. I mean, different context, but ultimately kind of just a goofball movie.
Yeah.
But Junior was another one famous with Arnie.
Yeah.
Is that the one where he's pregnant?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is. Which, how did that get past the filter?
I was going to say, imagine pitching that.
Yeah.
I got this idea for a movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, is he going to kill aliens? No. He's going to be pregnant.
Right.
Oh.
I love it. Sign it off. Massive budget.
Yeah,
There's no way we don't make money on that.
Here's $100 million. Make that movie.
No way we don't make money on that. I mean, it's just it's going to be too easy and it's too obvious for us.
Hasn't been done already? No.
Shockingly not, and more than likely will never be done ever again.
Yes.
So I guess we've got a scenario here where Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau are trying to convince the world that it's all good when they're teammates at the Ryder Cup, which it has to be.
Right.
Because it's a team event, and no one else on the team wants to deal with the two of them being clowns to each other. I'm not buying it, though, if it's legit. Like, if it's legitimate beef and they legitimately don't like each other, then you'll stay away from each other. You're not going to pick fights, but it doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to be best friends. Right. Steve Stricker's the captain for the Ryder Cup. He's not going to pair them together, but I would love to see it. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see them paired together and then one of them play horrible golf.
Why do you want to see that?
Because I want to see chaos. That's all.
Okay.
Like I'm an agent of chaos. That's what I'm looking for. Just like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Back to comic book movies again.
That's right. You've seen that movie. I mean, come on, Gord. You've seen The Dark Knight. You've seen Batman movies.
I've seen The Dark Knight, I think.
Yes.
I think I watched
Phenomenal movie.
Okay.
Heath Ledger wasn't spectacular as the Joker.
He was good, yeah. It's just not my thing. I mean, it was good. I liked it. I liked the Joker. Like that movie.
Do you?
Yeah, I thought the
You're
Joker
a fan
was
of the
good.
Joker? So I'm a fan of chaos at the Ryder Cup, but you're a fan of the Joker.
No, but the movie The Joker.
I see.
But I would say that the idea that it's kind of interesting that this idea that people on teams all get along because they don't.
Of course not.
They don't. You've been on teams, right? Like,
yep.
I mean, everyone assumes that Ray Ferraro and I get along. We don't.
Never. You guys despise
can't
each
stand
other.
each other. We got to do it on TV.
Right.
No, but there's always stuff within dressing rooms. There's always stuff within teams. You got, first of all, you got a bunch of highly competitive people, male or female. It's not always going to go smoothly, and you're going to sit there and go, you're on the power play, and I'm going to be sitting there going like, I got more goals than he does. Why aren't I in the power play?
Right. Which, again, should be a gripe with the coach.
Right.
But it's not always a gripe with the coach.
It's not. It's like, look at that guy politicking again. Look at that guy in the media again. Look at that guy talking again. Look at that. I mean, this idea, like, I started out covering the Oilers in the 80s. And this idea that they were this, 22-man band of happy warriors, there was lots of rivalry and unhappiness within that group, but they put it aside when they played. So I don't think it hurts the team if Koepka and DeChambeau are there. I mean, whether they get along or not.
They played themselves on there.
Just do your job and shut up.
Yeah, they deserve to be there, of course. And that's, I'm sure there's going to be someone on the European side, a couple of guys that don't get along, don't love each other. It doesn't matter.
Was the Oakland A's, when they won the World Series in the early 70s, they called them 25 men, 25 cabs?
Right. No one got along. No one was doing anything with each other after the games.
Yeah. So what?
If you have enough talent and you show up and you're professional enough, it's all good. Generally, it's driven by the way the rest of the team reacts to the best player. And a lot of times the attitude of the best player.
That's good. Yeah. So Sidney Crosby certainly is very inclusive and brings everyone in.
Exactly.
And makes everyone feel welcome.
I could see them having a great room because Sid is humble. Sid, again, like you said, is inclusive. And I think they would appreciate his talents. They would understand what he brings to them based on those talents. But I don't think he'd shove it in their face, his talents and what he can bring to the table.
Well, but there is an interesting kind of dynamic within teams too, and that is the competitiveness between players. So if you look at great NHL teams over the years, the Oilers had Gretzky and Messier. Pittsburgh had Lemieux and Francis. There was Yzerman and Fedorov, Sakic and Forsberg, Crosby and Malkin. There's always a little dynamic tension between the two, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're happy your teammates scored, but you want to score too, right?
Right.
And so as long as it's moving in the same direction, it's great. Where it falls apart is when it's this.
Yeah,
right.
And when the second guy thinks he should be the first guy or can't live without being the first guy.
Right.
Right. Like in Crosby, Malkin, Gretzky, Messier, perfect examples of that. Where Messier went on to be the number one guy. Malkin, if he was playing anywhere else in the league, he would be the number one guy.
Sure, and would have been. I mean, think about if he's somewhere else. I mean, he didn't make the top 100 players.
Which is just outrageous.
It is, but I mean,
it's just that's a silly omission that makes no sense.
Right, but the fact is he was never really the number one center on his own team, and
right,
which
but
is not his
Messier,
fault.
Should Messier have been on the '87 Canada Cup team then?
Of course he.
Of course.
Yeah.
But he was never the number one center.
Right.
In his career in Edmonton.
Right.
Until Gretzky left.
Until Gretzky left. And people would point out that Messier won 2 Stanley Cups without Gretzky, and Gretzky never won without Messier. So that argument goes in a circle. But as long as it's dynamic tension and not the kind of tension that where it's just it's him or me.
Right. And you want that guy to have success. You may want more maybe fame yourself, maybe you want more opportunity yourself, more production yourself. But I think if you appreciate that other guy did something great, that's going to go a long way. That I think is what it comes down to. Because the guy at the top, if he's got a bad attitude, that's going to filter through. People are really going to dislike him.
And the big thing, Brian, is how that best player on your team reacts to players who aren't nearly as good as him,
right,
or her, right. So you're especially in a cap league like the NHL, you're going to have 5 or 6 guys on your team that really aren't very good. I mean, comparatively, aren't very good.
Yeah.
And NFL teams have that too, right? Lots of guys making the minimum. You got to, right? So how do you treat those guys that are just doing their best every day but aren't nearly as good as you?
Well, that's a big part of the program. It's a big part of keeping a team together. The NFL season is right around the corner, 2 weeks tonight. I just saw this tweet from Adam Schefter. The NFL staff reported to club executives today the success of ticket sales headed into the season. Season ticket renewal rate is at 92%, equaling a 5-year high. In the preseason, 98% of fans have used a mobile ticket, up from 67%. That's pretty significant. To chat about that, among other things throughout the league, we're joined now by former Saints and Dolphins GM and host of the Football GM podcast, Randy Mueller, back on Overdrive. How you doing, Randy?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Hope you're well.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I mean, I just mentioned that Schefter tweet about season ticket renewal rates, and obviously it feels like football is back and the excitement is back. We know it starts 2 weeks from tonight, but we're kind of through the COVID era in terms of the way the NFL is going to operate. Do you sense that there's as much excitement for this upcoming season as there has been for any other season in a long time?
Oh, I think there is. I think the talk about the demise of the NFL might be greatly exaggerated, right? Yeah, I mean, I have not felt any season more than this year coming on. I mean, the fans are excited. The media is excited. I think some of it is coming out of COVID, and people just want to be around people. So I think there's a plan in place to deal with COVID. I don't think we're out of the woods by any means, but it seems like the plan in place is being accepted by most of the fans. And so it'll be interesting to see how it kind of pans out. I know the clubs still have protocols, still have issues that they are dealing with every day. So it's far from normal for them, but I do think there's an excitement in the air, and it'll be fun to actually get real football here in a couple weeks.
Randy, you talked about the frustration that some teams are having, and Sean McDermott, the coach of the Buffalo Bills, talked about it. You know, the fact that he wants more of his players vaccinated. They've got 4 guys on the COVID sideline list, if you want to call it that. Isaiah McKenzie got fined by the NFL for not following the protocols. Put yourself in the shoes of a general manager trying to manage this. How would you do it?
Yeah, it's really an all-encompassing job, that's for sure. I think most of these teams have hired a person or two just to manage this, like you said. As a GM, and I've been in that seat several times, it's hard to bring your team together, and you find that you're always the mediator, right? Whether it's between coaches and players, players and players, sometimes coaches and coaches, definitely the outside world as a messenger, you're kind of in between. So you've got to make all sides happy, and that's hard. I do know that it's easier the more vaccinated guys you have on your team because you can treat them all the same. You have exactly a plan as to how you're going to move forward with positive tests, and those that are vaccinated obviously have a quicker route to return. I think it's really hard when, for example, a quarterback is not vaccinated and you don't know from day to day if you're going to have him or not, and if he's out, when you'll get him back. So I think from a competitive standpoint, I would surely, and I know the GMs in the NFL have done this, but I would surely try to get that point across. It gives us a better chance competitively the more of you guys that gets vaccinated, that's for sure. And at some point, football in general is like this. It's a team sport. You've got to put the team ahead of yourself, and you can make a decision based on what's best for you, but it's going to have ramifications with your team. So therein lies the story, and hopefully guys are going to do what's right for the team to give them a chance to move forward.
We're chatting with longtime NFL GM Randy Mueller. Where do you stand on this new development in the NFL in the past couple of years where quarterbacks are just not playing in the preseason? Do you think that's beneficial to them in terms of the way they prepare for the regular season, or would you prefer to see these guys get some snaps in the preseason?
Well, I think it depends who they are for one thing, and it kind of depends where your team is from a team-building standpoint as well. I know this, the best chance, let's say the Cowboys, the best chance for them to fail going forward is to not have Dak. So is it really worth it to play him and get him some snaps ahead of time or not? Probably not. You know, we used to do this in the 80s and 90s. We wouldn't play our best players in preseason. We had a running back in Seattle for years, Kurt Warner, who is the other Kurt Warner, but he was the best player on our team. Chuck Knox never played him. I don't blame him. I mean, it just wasn't worth the risk. And these teams now, in this year especially, are so paper thin because of the cap reduction and having to release players to be cap compliant. They've had to come into camp now with lesser depth than ever before. So I think what you're finding is the new preseason is these joint workouts that teams are having between each other. They can script everything out. They can get everything accomplished at a higher speed, at almost a game speed, without the tackling at the end of it to risk injury. So I think that's your new preseason right there. And the teams that didn't do that this year, and there's a handful, I think are at a disadvantage because of it.
Okay, so Randy, I want to ask you this, and again, I want you to put your GM hat on. You drafted Trevor Lawrence first overall in Jacksonville, and Urban Meyer has now declared that he will start the season, even though the results in the preseason have been mixed at best. Any doubt in your mind that at the start of training camp that Lawrence was going to be the guy?
No, there was zero doubt. You know, I know they tried to make a fictitious competition out of it, and maybe you can get away with that in college, but in the NFL, there are a lot of things that have happened and you're predisposed of without a declaration from the head coach. And I don't think that's one that had everybody in suspense. I don't have a doubt that he'll be good going forward, but most of us that saw him at Clemson said there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be a period of adjustment for him, for offenses, for the speed of the game. In general, he's going to line up now against teams that are more talented than him. He never had to do that in Clemson. Same with Urban Meyer from that standpoint. He's got a team now that the other side is paid as well, and they're probably better than him on most Sundays. He's never had that in college. So it's a period of adjustment for a lot of people when you step up to the NFL level.
We're chatting with Randy Mueller, former Saints and Dolphins GM, host of the Football GM podcast. Injuries play such a big role in the preseason, and really that's germane to the topic we were just having about whether or not you're going to play somebody or not. What's it like being a GM and just kind of crawling towards the finish line, and how difficult is it to handle a massive injury that takes a guy out for the year? It's
really a grind, I'll be honest with you. There are so many sleepless nights for these guys. And that's all that's been on your mind really for the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's up to the coaches to bring what's on paper together as a team, and they spend a lot of time doing that. But as a GM, as the manager of the team building task per se, that's really all you've been worried about the last 2 or 3 weeks. I know that drawing from my past, I never relaxed until we were done with that last preseason game. And when the coach told me we're not going to play certain starters week 4 back then, it'd be week 3 this year, I was happy. I knew that we wouldn't have to replace anybody. I knew that replacing them is almost impossible, right? You get a frontline guy hurt. There's not a drawer of frontline guys out there where you can go draw one out of a hat for. So you take a big step back. So I'm all for protecting health with these guys. You've got to get your work done. I do understand that. There are some coaches now that still play guys that are very successful. Bill Belichick's one of them. Andy Reid's one of them. Those guys have specific reasons in mind that they play guys, and they feel like it's more important to work on pad level, coaching, physical play, building up, resistance against physical play. And I can't, disagree with it at all, but it's not for everybody. So the philosophies are clear which lane people pick. That's for sure.
You can find the Football GM podcast wherever you download your podcast. He is a longtime NFL executive, Randy Mueller. Always great to have you on, Randy. Thank you for doing this. We'll do it again down the road.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens here, Gord, in terms of avoiding the injury bug and just crawling to opening night.
I'll be interested to see, the number of young quarterbacks that play this year and how long teams will stay with them. I think Trevor Lawrence gets the whole year. He's the first pick.
Yeah, first overall, big talent, face of the organization.
But everyone's clamoring for they want Justin Fields or they want, this or that, whoever it is. It's different when the season starts. And you always want the shiny new toy. But I do think that it'll be interesting to see how these quarterbacking battles play out.
Yeah, and the fact that some guys just aren't ready, right? Like I was reading about it today, Trey Lance in San Francisco, which should not be a surprise because when they took him, it felt like a long-term project. Like this is a kid with some warts. This is a kid that needs to grow in his game. And the Niners feel like they got a lot of talent and have the ability to potentially get back to the playoffs. And that doesn't jive with a young quarterback who's going to have to go through the ringer here. So, Justin Fields, the same thing. Mac Jones in New England. They're the shiny new toy. There's a ton of potential, but their careers are not going to be, made or broken based on what happens in the preseason or whether or not they start week 1 or week 2.
But you get excited about the preseason, right? And fans, you always want the guy in the ball cap. It always seems like that. You always want the guy in the ball cap. The backup goalie, the backup quarterback, whoever it is, you always want the guy in the ball cap. And so I do think that the Mac Jones one is interesting in New England. And, Jordan Love in Green Bay. I mean, how long until you're clamoring for Jordan Love to start playing?
I don't picture that. I do not picture that at any point this season.
No, I don't.
But you never know. Maybe next year. Maybe in camp next year. Who knows? Jordan Love season, #. All right, so we're tracking the Jays, and they're in Detroit this upcoming weekend. So we'll start looking ahead to that. Canada-U.S. in about 20 minutes right here on TSN Radio. You can watch it on TSN. He is Gordon Miller. I'm Brian Hayes. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. So a couple of things have developed here in the city of Toronto. One recently, the other one over the course of a year and a half, where if a chain of events takes place, it's inevitable someone's name is going to trend on Twitter. So we saw it recently. Okay. Jose Barrios got lit up a couple of days ago. Yeah. Austin Martin immediately starts trending, right? Like that was the focal point of the trade going back to Minnesota. Barrios struggles. People are tweeting, hey, I wonder what Austin Martin's up to. Kind of wish we didn't make that deal. The second one that has happened and has been happening for the better part of a year is whenever you get a good young player in the NHL signing a long-term deal, Mitch Marner starts trending on Twitter. Marner is trending on Twitter for two reasons. One, Sean Couturier signed a deal, 8 years at 7.75. Really quality player, two-way center. I think he had 40 a couple of years ago.
30. He's had 30 twice. Won the Selke.
Yeah, really good player. I think could be on Canada at the Winter Games if they go there. I think he's got a legitimate shot, certainly being a bubble guy. And Svechnikov down in Carolina signed the same deal, 8 years, $62 million total. Yeah, and also really good guy. Not quite a point-a-game guy, but I think will be someone that will score 30, 35 a year. I think Marner is more talented than both, more productive offensively than both, but 8 years instead of 6, 7.75 instead of 10.85 or whatever it was. Mitch Marner, he's just always going to trend whenever you see a deal like this.
Yeah, and now part of the reason it's trending because Toronto has a huge fan base, and so whenever people start murmuring in Toronto, there's going to be more, murmuring here than there'd be in Edmonton or Calgary or anywhere else. The thing that's interesting to me, twofold. Number one, apples to apples here. Marner and these guys aren't necessarily comparable, but the Svechnikov deal is comparable for Elias Pettersson, for Brady Tkachuk, for the other sort of free agent, restricted free agent forwards that are out there. That's more of a comparable. The second thing is the defenseman contracts we've seen, to me, relate directly to Morgan Riley. And that's you can talk about Marner all you want. He's signed.
The deal's done. Yeah,
the deal's done. He's not going anywhere. But Morgan Riley isn't. And when you see 9.5 for Seth Jones and Dougie Hamilton coming in at 9.
9, yep.
And just thinking of the other one the other day, who just got the other big one that I'm missing.
Cale Makar signed a long-term deal.
Cale Makar signed a big deal. Morgan Riley's 8.5 or 9 million all day based on these contracts.
More than likely. Yep.
Darnell Nurse.
Darnell Nurse was the other one. He signed for 9, wasn't it?
9.5, I think.
Yeah.
So
9.25 or something.
Yeah. So really, that's the contract to me. The Mitch Marner thing is a theoretical discussion. You can complain all you want about it. The deal's signed. It is what it is. He's been a very productive player for Toronto.
Yep.
The key question to me is what happens with Morgan Riley. That's the contract that decides everything here.
That is going to be Zach Hyman 2.0, more than likely.
Well, except, with all due respect to Zach Hyman, he was the team's fifth best forward.
Yep. And Morgan Riley's their best defenseman.
This is your best defenseman.
Yep. I guess what I'm saying is in terms of it's going to hang over the season. If he gets to free agency, there's going to be a big offer out there that the Leafs may not be able to match. And it's on the Leafs to determine where they want to go with this while there is still some power in their side of the court. That Riley doesn't have to accept it. Riley can just say, I'm not negotiating, I'm going to play this out. That's his call. I think Hyman would have been more than willing to negotiate last year, and I guess the Leafs just never even tried.
Well, the problem was they couldn't. Until they knew, there were some other things that had fallen in place. They didn't know about their goaltending. So they had to wait on Hyman until their goaltending situation got sorted out. They had to leave some money for that. If you're Morgan Riley, why wouldn't you wait? You just gain leverage.
Yeah, if you play well.
Well, even if you don't. If
you don't, you're going to lose some money.
You got a body of work, though. I mean,
yeah, you do. Yep.
He's going to be, in all likelihood, he's going to be on the Canadian Olympic team. So I mean, he's got a body of work there that puts him in the elite. And certainly, I mean, if you put him up against those other guys we talked about, I mean, numerically, Riley's got a better case. And I got to be honest. I mean, all this talk about the core four in Toronto or the big four. If I'm Morgan Riley, I'm saying I'm the guy who's been here the longest. Well, I'm the guy who's logged the minutes.
Yep.
I'm the guy
been through the ringer.
What about me?
Loves being a Leaf.
Yeah. What about me?
Yep. That would be consistent with what everyone else has done here. Is what about me? No one's left a penny on the table.
Why should he?
At any point. And that was the logic that was applied to Zach Hyman. Why would Zach Hyman leave money on the table? No one else did.
If I'm Riley, I'm sorry, but your cap jam is your fault. That's not your fault, but that's you decided to distribute the money the way you did. So that's not my problem.
Well, although he is also entitled to his own decision, and if he makes it clear he wants to stay in Toronto, then he will have to work within the boundaries of what is available. I don't know if he'll ever get to that point. If the Leafs have to hope that he will. But you bring up an interesting point about the core four up front, because the thought process has been if it's going to ever be broken up, it's going to be broken up because of playoff failure. What maybe should be thought of here is it's going to have to be broken up so that you can keep somebody else.
Well, but that they've made it very clear, though, right, that they're not interested in doing that.
Well,
Kyle Dubas is
that might be different though with Morgan Riley,
and he said to us on this show that he's committed to this path that they're on.
Yeah, Masai was committed to DeMar DeRozan. I mean, I can give you countless examples of man. If you're if you're just committed, you might as well leave now. What is the point of just saying I'm committed for the rest of their terms? I mean, no one should believe that that's going to be the case. It doesn't mean that they won't be here.
Well, I think
throughout their case,
it's why you should never say you won't trade a player.
No, it's ludicrous, right? Yeah, Colorado calls you tonight and says we're looking to trade Nathan McKinnon. You're not going to say sorry, I've made promises.
Yeah,
of course you're going to find a way to make something work. And again, I think it's not a shot at the 4 forwards if the change is based on utilizing the money elsewhere. Right. Even if they do win, let's say they make the playoffs, they win a couple of rounds, you still might say, I need Riley over this player.
Because if they win a couple of rounds, Morgan Riley is going to be a big part of it.
He'll be playing a big role.
He's going to be a huge part of it.
So it's a very different viewpoint, right? It's not a failure of the 4. It's not even a failure of that cap structure with it. It's an alternative that makes more sense, right? Because I think the belief has been if they break up the big 4, it's because they failed. It was a failure. That doesn't have to be the case.
No.
If you're dealing with a finite number and another guy is up that you feel like you've got to keep.
Because it's a zero-sum game.
Right.
The salary cap, if you get more, I have to take less.
That's as easy as it is.
That's the way it works.
Yep.
So the question is, would Morgan Riley be willing to take less? And what do they look like without him? And the Leafs without Morgan Riley on defense right now, based on what they have and what's coming, that's not an appetizing
potentially
prospect.
Very different looking team. Yep, absolutely. These will be questions that we'll have leading up to camp. We're less than a month away from camps opening up and getting throughout the year and into next season as well. Great seeing you, Gord. You're going to be in the big chair tomorrow, I believe.
Yes. Well, I'll do what I can to fill your giant shoes.
Yes, you look very excited. Try not to get injured on the job. It's
my goal.
It can be tough, man.
My goal.
It can be tough. Do your thing. Stay at 100%. Battle, grind, the whole 9. There he is, Gord Miller. I'm Brian Hayes. We are out of here. Canada, U.S. up next, right here on TSN Radio and on TSN. The show is back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Gord and the boys will chat then.